Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in here. Publicly Buzzed Murder Church about to come at you. Today we got another one of these Manson Family Parole Hearings, this time with Bruce Davis. I'm going to give a little bit of a background on Bruce Davis. He was known as Charles Manson's right-hand man. But yeah, running a little bit late today. Everyone coming in, really appreciate it. About to hit you. Welcome in here, ladies and gentlemen, to Murder Church. What is happening? Thanks for coming in late. I know today has been weird. It's been weird for me too. I woke up with the worst shoulder pain I've had in a long time. It was actually so bad that it was coming into my chest and like affecting the way I was breathing. It was fucking weird. But I took care of that, so I'm here to rock and roll. I got my lunch with me, eating a little bit of chili that I made last night, so I'm going to be eating that as well. Having some coffee, having some water. We're going over today. And again, we're not finishing the Jack Kevorkian trial just yet. I'd gotten with Bob Motta. He said to even get back with him today, which today turned out to be weird. But he had a family emergency type situation going on. I know his uncle had passed away, and I think they were doing a celebration of life today. So hopefully I can get Bob next week, and we can finish off the Jack Kevorkian trial and get that going. Also, I'd hope to get Bob on later this week for some of this Rust conversation. I'd love to get some legal analysis from him. So I'm going to be working on that, guys. So, yeah. But today we're going to go down this road that we've started with the Manson family hearing paroles. And again, this guy right here, Bruce Davis, that you're seeing over here to the side of me, was known as Charles Manson's right-hand man. So it's interesting. He's an interesting character here. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a backstory here as well about this cat. Let's see here. Bruce Davis, born in 1942, was an editor of his high school yearbook. In 1962, he decided to travel to California. In 1967, Bruce Davis met Charles Manson and his associates Mary Brunner, Lynette Frome, and Patricia Krenwinkel. Davis lived in London from November 1968 to April 1969 while working at the Church of Scientology headquarters. I thought that was interesting and weird. Davis was present when, in July of 1969, Manson allegedly cut Gary Hinman's left ear off. Hinman was allegedly stabbed to death by Bobby Buscelle. One day, although neither Manson nor Davis were present when Hinman was murdered. In late August, Davis was a participant in the murder of Spawn Ranch's hand Donald Shorty Shea. Davis was present when, November 5th, 1969, John Philip Hott, a.k.a. Zero, allegedly killed himself playing Russian roulette. At some point after these events, the mic's still looking good. It's down just a little bit. Turn it up a little bit. Yo. At some point after these events, Davis went into hiding, ultimately turning himself in December 2nd, 1970. So he wasn't round up with the initial crew when they were all arrested. Conviction in prison in 1972. Davis was convicted in Los Angeles County of 2 counts of first-degree murder for the killings of Hinman and Shea. Conspiracy to commit murder and robbery. California having recently abolished the death penalty, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. This basically happened to everyone. Manson even had death at first. He began his sentence in April of 21st, 1972. He became a preacher in the prison chapel, like many do. I think Tex Watson did something similar. and then, of course, had been trying to get out ever since. Now, let's go in here a little bit right here. The motives for Shay's murder. Manson decided to have Shay killed because he believed Shay had reported the family and their crimes to the police, resulting in a raid on the ranch on August 16th, where the family was taken into custody on suspicion of car theft. Family member Bruce Davis claimed that the decision to kill Shay came, it's a little loud now, sorry about that, trying to get the mic right. The decision to kill Shay came from Manson because he considered him to be a snitch, although motive for the murder could have stemmed from a fight between Charles Manson and Shay at the Gresham Street home in Conga Park, Los Angeles. Probably butchered that Manson shared with Bill Vance and several Manson family members. Wendy Buckley, the wife of Spawn Ranch hand Randy Starr, was beaten by Charles Manson for her refusal to loan her truck to Manson in Vance for the robberies. In the days prior, law enforcement questioned Buckley for a string of robberies in which her truck had been identified. She realized that Manson and Vance had been borrowing her truck to commit these robberies and decided to quit loaning it to them. When Shay found out about Manson assaulting Buckley, he went to the Gresham Street home and assaulted both Manson and Vance with threats to stay away from Spawn Ranch. After Manson moved into Spawn Ranch, Larry Bailey, one of the newer members of the Manson family, was spying on Shay for Manson and was quickly caught. As a result, Shay, Buckley, and others stripped Bailey naked and tied him to a tree facing the main road, trying to send a message to the family. The murder. Shay was murdered on August 26, 1969, more than 2 weeks after the Tate and LaBianca murders. Susan Atkins of the family lured Shay to a remote spot of the ranch. There he was ambushed and killed by Davis and Grogan. Now, I want to show you this. This is one of the only, there's been 2 people who have gotten out now thanks to Van Houten, but Steve Grogan got out of prison, and he was a part of this murder. I just want to show you real quick. This man is in a band, and you can watch him play. At least you could. This is some older footage. I think it's from 2017. He's still in singing and playing guitar. The man I just mentioned. I can't really see it on full screen. Yeah. Manson told Davis, Tex Watson, and Steve Grogan to ask for a ride to a nearby car parts yard on the ranch. According to Davis, he sat in the back seat with Grogan when he hit Shay with a pipe wrench, and Watson stabbed him. They brought Shay down a hill behind the ranch and stabbed him and brutally tortured him to death. Bruce Davis recalled at the parole hearings, "I was in the car when Steve Grogan hit Shorty with the pipe wrench. Charles Watson stabbed him," Tex Watson. "I was in the back seat with Grogan. Then it took Shorty out. They had to go down a hill to a place. I stayed in the car for quite a while. Then I went down the hill later on, and that's when I cut Shorty on the shoulder with a knife after he was, well, I don't know. I don't know if he was dead or not. He didn't bleed when I cut him on the shoulder. When I showed up, he was incapacitated. I don't know if you asked if he was unconscious. I don't know. He may or may not have been. He didn't seem conscious. He wasn't moving or saying anything. And it started off, Manson handed me a machete as if I was supposed to. I mean, I know what he wanted, but I couldn't do that. And in fact, I did touch Shorty Shay with a machete on the back of his neck, didn't break the skin. I mean, I just couldn't do it. And then I threw the knife, and he handed me a bayonet, and I just reached over, and I don't know which side it was on, but I cut him right above the shoulder, on the shoulder, just with the tip of the blade, sort of like saying, "Are you satisfied, Charlie?" I turned around and walked away, and I was sick for about 2 to 3 days. I mean, I couldn't even think about it, what I had done. According to Bruce Davis and Steve Clem Grogan, who participated in Shay's murder, Bill Vance and Larry Bailey were also present at the killings. Cover up an admission. Yeah, I just want to give you kind of a little bit of a brief synopsis there of what's going on here as we get into the parole hearing that we're about to see. Again, thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate it. I don't know why the chat's not working there. Might have to wake that guy up real quick. Boom, boom. We're about to jump in here. Appreciate everyone for hanging out today. I about said this morning just because I'm so used to on Murder Church to saying this morning. But please, on X, go share this out, folks. That really helps me out. Share it from here. Share it on Facebook. Share it out. Let people know that you're hanging out on Murder Church. Yeah, let's jump in here.
Today's date is September 24th, 1998. It's approximately 8:35. We're at CMC East. The legal status of Mr. Davis is that he was received by the Department of Corrections on April 21st, 1972 from Los Angeles County for the offense of first-degree murder, case number A267-861. With minimum eligible parole date of December 1st, 1977. Additional counts are first-degree murder, the same case number from Los Angeles County, and a stayed count of conspiracy to commit murder with the same case number. We will establish voice identification of everybody in the room by stating our name, spelling our last name.
Thank you, Dinah. You're amazing.
Davis, you will add your CDC number after spelling your last name. I will start. We will proceed to my left. E. Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S, Commissioner.
M. Ortega, O-R-T-E-G-A, Commissioner.
A. Manzella, M-A-N-Z-E-L-L-A, Deputy DA.
R. Curry, C-U-R-R-Y, Legal
Welcome
Assistant.
in, everybody. Thanks for being here.
George Denny, D-E-N-N-Y, attorney representing Mr. Davis.
Bruce Davis, D-A-V-I-S, B41079.
Ramon Estrada, E-S-T-R-A-D-A, Deputy Commissioner.
Jeff Parker, P-A-R-K-E-R, Live Hearing Coordinator, CMC.
Dennis Lynch, for TV.
Beth Karras, K-A-R-A-S, Reporter for TV.
That identifies everyone in the room except a CDC officer that is here for security purposes only and will not participate in the hearing. Purpose of today's hearing is to consider your suitability for parole. In arriving at a decision, we will consider the commitment offenses, your prior criminal conduct and social history, as well as your behavior since your commitment to prison. We have reviewed your central file and prior transcripts. We will give you an opportunity to make any corrections or clarifications to the record. I will incorporate by reference a statement prepared for this board report, or this board hearing, page 1. Do you have any objection, counsel?
I'm not sure what report you're referring to, Your Honor.
September 1998 board report in your file.
Yeah, I have read that, and I have no problem with it.
Thank you. We will review your progress since the last hearing, new psychiatric reports, and other information which has a bearing on parole suitability. Any change in parole plan should be brought to our attention today. Before we recess for deliberation, the district attorney, your attorney, and you will be given an opportunity to make a short statement regarding parole suitability and length of confinement. The law and the rules of the Board of Prison Terms state that you are to be denied a parole date if your release would pose an unreasonable risk of danger to others. You are afforded certain rights in this hearing. I will ask your counsel if these rights have been met to this point.
I've never seen a list of the rights, but as far as I can tell thus far, things are progressing as they have in the past.
Thank you. You also have a right to an impartial panel. Do you have any objection to any panel member seated across the table from you?
Well, no. May I make inquiry? In the past, the new panel members have been good enough to give some information about themselves. I understand you're new, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
And I've heard nothing about your past or background, and Mr. Estrada, I've heard nothing about yours, and would certainly appreciate some idea of who it is who's judging us at this point.
Do you have any basis on which to object to the composition of the panel? Or is your inquiry simply to superficially know the panel members?
The latter.
Okay. I live in this county, live in California all of my life. I'm a retired sheriff of this county and been in law enforcement for over 40 years and appointed to the Board of Prison Terms about a month and a half ago.
I'm from Los Angeles County. born in California. I've been a probation officer, parole agent, and for about 20 years, and I've been on the Board of Prison Terms for the last about 40 months.
Okay.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
You will receive a copy of our tentative written decision today. The decision becomes effective 90 days after review. A copy of the transcript and copy of the decision will be sent to you. You have a right to appeal the decision within 90 days of the effective date of that decision. You are not required to discuss the matter with the panel, and you are not required to admit the offense. The panel does, however, accept as true the findings of the court. Mr. Estrada, is there any confidential information to be used today?
No.
We'll pass your attorney a list of documents referred to in this hearing and ask if he has reviewed those documents, and ask that he pass them to the Deputy District Attorney.
I don't know whether I have had a chance to review all the letters, both opposition, which I think I reviewed 2 of them, but letters in support of parole. I have gotten copies of some that I had supposed had reached the board when I reviewed the case. Yesterday, I didn't see copies of a letter, for instance, from Chuck Colson.
Okay, that phase of the hearing will be handled by Commissioner Ortega. When we get to that phase and he reads those that have been received, you can compare that with those that you have reviewed, and if you have additional documents, we will take them at that time. Are there any preliminary objections?
No.
No. Are there any documents to be given to the panel today?
Well, other than copies of letters that perhaps you have not gotten, those would be the only things.
We will be glad to accept at that time. Does the prisoner plan to answer questions today?
Absolutely.
If you will raise your right hand, Mr. Davis, do you solemnly swear or affirm in the hearing now pending to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Davis, I've reviewed the file, and I would suspect that you are familiar, far more familiar probably, with the content of this file than I am. We'll refer to the case summary, in which it says, as to the victim, Gary Hinman, his body was found in a decomposed state in the living room of his home in Topanga, July 31st, 1969. The autopsy revealed that the victim was killed by stab wounds to the chest, which penetrated his heart. The autopsy further revealed that he had suffered other wounds, including a stab wound to the area of his chest, a gash on top of his head, a gash behind his right ear, and lacerations of the left side of his face, which cut off part of his ear and cheek. Davis was one of the group of crime partners involved in the murder. Hinman was kept prisoner in his home for 2 days, during which time he was stabbed and clubbed before finally being put to death. Is that about the way it happened?
Yes, it is.
And what was your participation in this crime?
I drove the other defendants to the house. I returned to the house a couple days or a day later. I was there for a few minutes and left. That's my participation.
Didn't you carry a gun during that time?
There was a gun was in the house, had been fired. Bobby Beausoleil had the gun. I got it back from him.
Wasn't that your gun?
Yes, it was.
So you went initially to the home of Mr. Hinman armed with a gun?
No, ma'am. No, sir.
And
Bobby had borrowed my gun.
I see. So he took it.
And when I heard that it had been fired in the house, I got it back from him and I took it out of the house.
Weren't you standing in the house with the gun?
Yeah, for a minute I was.
At the time that Mr. Hinman was being cut, as I
Yes, that's
recall,
true.
you were standing in the same room with a gun in your hand.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. How long were you there when you dropped off the other crime partners?
Just dropped them off. I didn't even go in.
You didn't go in the initial time? What was the purpose of them going to that home?
To get money from Gary.
To rob him or to borrow it from him?
I suppose to rob him. I mean, I don't suppose that's what it was. It wasn't to borrow it.
So you were transporting these folks to Mr. Hinman's home for the purpose of robbery, and you knew that Beaujolais had your gun.
Yes, I did.
Then apparently you took the man's car
Yes, I did.
and came back, or did you
I
take
took
the car on the second occasion that you were at the home?
Second occasion.
That's the time that you saw him being stabbed and
I
otherwise
saw him
abused.
no, I didn't see him being stabbed. I saw him being cut on the ear when Manson cut him on the ear.
I see. Is that the laceration that cut his part of his ear off?
Yes, I believe so.
Then your statement is that you left in the victim's car.
Yes.
Did you have reason to believe that he was dying on that day?
No.
You thought somehow they were going to call an ambulance for him with his ear cut off?
Well, you're right. I didn't really think anything. I didn't think that they were going to call an ambulance, that's for sure. I didn't realize the extent of his wound. I know it was blood. There was blood. I didn't realize the extent of it.
You knew that his ear was partially cut off.
No, I just knew that there had been a blow to his side of his head and there was some blood. I didn't realize.
Probably a significant amount of blood.
Well, it was visible.
Yeah.
It was very visible. So,
You got in his car and left.
yes, I did.
At some point, you met again with your crime partners.
Just imagine for a second, you go to, I mean, this guy was from Tennessee. He even spent some time in the UK before he went to California. He's going to California to find his way, right? Same way as all these kids in a lot of situations. And this is where you end up. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy and so easy to end up in a bad spot, especially as a young person. It's worrisome. That's why, honestly, I couldn't be a parent. I know I've had this conversation on here before with a lot of you guys. I couldn't, man. Like, even after they're 18, like, they're still your kid, and you're like, they're going to go out there and somebody's going to get in their head, you know. I know you have to raise them to be strong and independent and smart and that. And hopefully I could be able to do that. But that would always be in my head. Somebody could manipulate somebody to this extent to where a normal person seemingly can be made to kill somebody or participate in these, whatever his story is.
Yes.
And was there some discussion about the incident at Mr. Hinman's home?
Yes, there was.
And you became aware that he was murdered?
Yes, I did.
And his body was allowed to lay on the floor of his home for several days until it was an advanced state of decomposition. Is that correct?
I understand that's true.
During that time, you had full knowledge that he had been murdered.
Yes, I did.
You ever think about calling authorities?
You know, I obviously didn't think about it enough to do it. Because I didn't do a thing about it.
Did you know any member of Mr. Hinman's family at that time?
No, I did not.
Have you since become aware of his family members?
Well, in fact, we've tried to contact them. I wanted to write them several years ago and just give them a chance to say whatever they wanted to say to me, if there was anything they wanted to say. I haven't been successful. Mr. Denny has made some effort in that direction, and to date, we haven't been successful in contacting them.
Okay. Leaving that for a moment, sometime later, I guess about a month, Victim Donald Shea was reported missing, and an investigation revealed that sometime between August 15th and September 1st, 1969, Davis and his crime partners murdered the victim and buried his body in or near Spawn Ranch. The victim worked at Spawn Ranch as a ranch hand while the prisoner and crime partners were living there. Intensive investigation failed to produce the body of the victim. However, in 1977, Steve Groven, one of the crime partners, furnished information to law enforcement personnel as to the location of the victim. The body was recovered. Shea was stabbed repeatedly until his death. You recall that incident?
Yes, I do.
Apparently you were at the ranch.
Yes, I was.
And Charles Manson and others talked about Mr. Shea being a police informant. And there was some conversation about taking him to some other location, killing him. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you and Manson and a couple of others and Mr. Shea got in a vehicle and went to a remote location. I think your statement was that he was murdered by the other participants, and then you were handed a machete. You told them that you couldn't do that. Apparently the demand was that you decapitate Mr. Shea. And you put the machete down, and when handed a bayonet-style knife, did in fact cut him on the shoulder.
That's true.
You assisted in carrying or dragging him to a location nearby. What happened then?
As soon as I dropped the bayonet, I walked away. I went on down it was on the side of a hill near the ranch. I went on down to the bottom of the hill, and I passed back to the ranch, and I went back to the ranch. I didn't know about the body. I didn't know what happened. I just knew that later on I heard that they buried Shorty's body. But I didn't know where or who I didn't know where it was buried.
You didn't participate in the burying of the body then?
No,
is that your statement?
That's exactly.
The recollection is that you walked down the path, went back to the ranch, and went to bed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went and laid down. I was in quite a state of shock.
Apparently not in such a state of shock that prevented you from going to sleep.
I probably did. I probably did go to sleep.
Pretty clear in the record that is what your statement was.
Yes.
At the time that you left in the vehicle with Mr. Shea, how many murders did you have information on that you and the family had participated in?
Well, I had information about myself concerning Gary Hinman, about the others in the Tate LaBianca.
And how many victims were killed in the Tate incident?
5, 7. I think there were 5.
And the LaBiancas were 2?
Yeah.
And Hinman was 1?
Yes, sir.
So that's 10. And still, you got in the vehicle and proceeded down the road knowing that number 11 was about to be murdered. Is that correct?
That's true.
Mr. Shea was not found for a very long period of time. Do you know anything about his family?
No, I really don't.
Do you know if he has any children?
I don't think so. The only thing I know about his family, or I was trying to think, is if I think someone from his family came to the trial, and some friends of his, other people that I knew at the ranch, but it never came out that I remember if he had children or. I think there was talk about he had his mother who was in Boston, I think, something like that, back east.
Okay, so at the trial, you became aware that this man had family members, a mother at least, and possibly a child. Did it ever occur to you to inform authorities or members of his family that his body was decomposing in a shallow grave on the Spawn Ranch?
I'm sorry to say it didn't.
So your silence, in effect, prevented the family members from providing a decent burial for this man, well, to the 8 years, and then you had no responsibility in informing authorities even then, is that correct?
I didn't know where the body was. And although you're right, I should have said I knew it was somewhere, but I couldn't be specific. I didn't know where it was.
Well, you didn't have information that they had left the ranch to bury the body, had you?
Right, I had no information one way or the other.
A reasonable person giving the facts as they appear in the record would assume, or could assume, that the body was very close to where they had murdered him.
I could have assumed that, right.
And even if you did not want to implicate yourself, you could have used the phone and called anonymously somebody so that that body could be recovered and turned over to his wife and family. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You apparently have no juvenile record, is that?
Yes, sir.
Criminal record?
Morning, Julie.
As to adult convictions, you first came to the attention of the authorities as an adult in 1968 when you were arrested for possession of marijuana. Case was dismissed. Again in 68, once again arrested for possession of marijuana. Charges were dismissed due to insufficient evidence. 69, you were arrested for receiving stolen property, grand theft, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. And I recall that you, in fact, did contribute to the delinquency of one or more minors during that period of your life. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. 69, charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. 70, arrested for receiving stolen property, no disposition. Again, in 70, arrested for fraudulently obtaining a firearm, and that apparently was when you gave false identification to purchase the 9mm gun that you stood in the living room of Mr. Hinman's home with as he was being stabbed or cut. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you now have a hold by the U.S. Marshal in order for you to serve a 3-year sentence after you complete your state prison time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. You have a sister?
Yes.
And where does she live?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay. I see little sense in recounting all of the everything that happened to you during your lifetime and what have you. If you have anything over the in the areas that I have discussed, and you want to expand on them, you're certainly invited to. You think of any question that I should ask you regarding these incidents?
Well, one thing I can say is I'm very sorry that
You'll be provided a time to give a statement.
I understand your questions, and I think they're thorough. I don't know of anything else. I can't think of anything else.
You probably would agree that a person on this side of the table would have some major concerns given your conduct during that time.
I certainly would.
Okay. I'll now call on Commissioner Estrada to discuss the time since you have been in state prison.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Davis.
Good morning.
We're going to basically be discussing your behavior since your last parole consideration here in 9/4/97. Okay. Now, from what I can gather, since that time, you received a Master of Arts degree for religion. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, from was it Bethany? Bethany Theological Seminary.
Yes, sir.
Okay, where's that school?
It's in Dothan, Alabama.
Is it an accredited college?
It's recognized by the CDC for their chaplains.
Okay.
That's the level of recognition that I understand.
I see. So you have a BA?
Yes, sir.
When did you get that?
Well, I got that through Bethany as well, as a result of a compilation of a lot of other studies that I had, life experience, some courses, some other educational things since I've been in prison mostly.
So when did you get that degree?
About a few months before I got the master's.
97?
I think so. I think there may be even a copy of it there.
Okay,
I don't know if they have a date on it, to tell you the truth. I don't know.
I was looking for it, and I couldn't find anything. That's why I was just asking you about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a Master of Arts in religion. You were summa cum laude, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And right now it was indicated in a CC1 report that you're presently working towards your PhD.
Yes, I am.
Is that through the same seminary?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I noticed that you also completed a course, The Freedom in Christ. Is that towards your PhD?
No, that's a course that I teach.
Oh, you teach. Okay. Okay, so how often do you teach?
Well, we have a weekly class.
Okay. Because it indicates that you completed the course. You're saying you just...
Well, I completed it. I went through the course about, I think in 95, when we first started it, and then after I completed it, then after a while I started teaching it myself.
Okay, you done, okay. Now, in regards to work, since September last year, you were working in a hospital diet kitchen as a clerk, and you received exceptional work reports. Then on January 7th, 1998, you were reassigned as a Building 2 porter. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You continue doing that, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Okay, and noted that your work reports have been average and above average.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else in regards to your employment or your work here in the institution?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, in regards to self-help, there was mention that you were participating in NA.
Narcotics Anonymous, right?
Correct. Yeah. Are you still involved with that?
Yes.
Okay. How often do you go?
A couple times a month.
2 times a month?
Average.
Okay. So how long have you been going to NA?
Oh, 2 years, 3 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years? Okay, good. Real good. Do you know your steps?
Yes, sir.
What's your 4th step?
An inventory. I believe the 4th step is make an inventory. Make an inventory, an inventory of yourself.
Okay. Okay. Maybe you should go a little bit more often.
Sir?
Maybe you should go a little bit more often. Disciplinaries. Since your arrival in CDC in 1972,
Yes,
you received 2 115s. The first one in January of 75 and the second one in January of 1980. So you've been disciplinary free for, I count, 18 years, 8 months. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Real good. I also noticed that you received 5 counseling chronicles, last one being on August 15th, 1992, which was maybe a little over 6 years. Which I count. Very good. You're presently classified in the general population, closed B custody, as a PIC, public interest case. Have you been receiving any type of vocational training during the past year?
Not this year, no,
Not
sir.
this year, correct. Okay. In regards to the CC1 report by R. York, they indicate that you pose, based on your commitment offense prior record parole adjustment, that you would pose an unpredictable degree of threat to the public safety if released from prison at this time. indicate that this assessment is based on the fact that assessing the probability of a specific individual committing another murder or serious crime when released from prison cannot be predicted. Although I consider David an unpredictable threat, if I had to assess a degree of threat to the public, then I would assess Davis as a low degree of threat based on his past psychiatric reports and his level of maturity at this time. And CC1 did indicate that you could benefit from continued participating in therapy and self-help groups, should remain disciplinary free and continue in your full-time assignment. Mr. Davis, do you have any comments in regard to the CC1 report?
No, sir.
Okay. Next is the psychological report by Dr. Burney, and had no diagnosis on Access 1. And basically concluded that inmate appears to have pursued an empty and self-serving lifestyle, at which time he became involved with individuals who held out a promise of excitement and sensual pleasures during the inmate's period of incarceration. He has matured through inside of positive programming, given these circumstances that the inmate's potential for violence when individuals as inmates. You wish to comment on the report?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there anything I missed that you've done during the past year that I didn't indicate?
No, I think we've covered it. Basically, I've been involved in the studies. I've been teaching classes. I go to NA. I work in the institution. That covers my program.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'll return to the chair.
Commissioner Ortega will discuss parole plans that you may have.
What are your parole plans, Mr. Davis?
Well, my wife lives locally. I have job offers in LA where I have to parole from the director of the Marine Exchange. So.
Your wife, what kind of work does your wife do?
She's a flight attendant.
Okay, is it difficult for her to relocate to Los Angeles in the event that happens? You know, you do have to go back to LA.
Yes, sir. She's based in LA, so it would just
first live up here.
It would, yes. It would just be a matter of relocation.
Okay, so that you could move back down to there. I know you have a young daughter, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How old is she now?
She'll be 5 in November.
Okay, it's your blood daughter, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me go through some of the letters that we received, and we received quite a few letters. And counsel, if you do have some that we may not have, then by all means, you might want to bring those to our attention. I did want to bring another thing to your attention. Initially in the hearing, you had indicated that you had never seen what rights we talk about when we ask if the rights have been met. I would direct your attention to the...
If you guys hearing static, let me do a quick fix. Might be on my end. Sometimes it does that.
The miscellaneous section of your file, there's a whole list of his rights there. And they're probably just about all of the hearings, just a list of about 14 or 15. So if you want to see which ones those are. And many of them are covered usually in the introduction anyway. I do that so that you know where they're at.
Thank you, sir.
And there's a letter here from Patricia Lemoyne. Is that correct?
Sister-in-law.
Okay, it's spelled capital Lemoine. And where does your sister-in-law live?
Reading.
Reading?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so a little ways from here. And of course, she's writing a very favorable letter for you in terms of the fact that you're married to her sister. My husband and I would do everything possible to help them make this major adjustment. That's one of the sentences. She says, we are awaiting a favorable response to all the letters that have been written in Bruce's behalf. I do have one letter that was in support from William P. Clark, C-L-A-R-K. And Mr. Clark is from the Clark Company, it says, on Pine Avenue, located in Paso Robles. It says, I'm a retired California judge, having served on the Superior Court in San Luis Obispo County, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court, which included a review of the Manson issues on appeal. At the request of his family and neighbors here in San Luis Obispo County, I have again reviewed the summary form. In summary form, Bruce Davis's files presently before you. I present no party or interest in the above captioned matter. However, I conclude that Mr. Davis's further incarceration beyond his 28 years served would constitute a miscarriage of justice. Then I have a letter from Captain M.H.K. Ashmeyer.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that's the one you alluded to, the Marine Exchange.
Yes, sir.
Let me spell Ashmeyer for the transcriber. It's A-C-H-E-M-E-Y-E-R. It states here, as we have stated in the past, we stand ready to support Mr. Davis in his quest for liberty. We have offered him our help in finding a job as well as temporary living quarters if needed. Now, he indicates helping you find a job. In other words, he's not offering a job, he's offering to help you find a job.
That's his way of saying it. He's told me that, he's always, in his past letters, he said he'll help me find a job.
Okay, so that's what he's saying, though.
Yes.
I didn't want to misunderstand because the way it sounded, he had offered a job, but apparently, I'm not too sure what the Marine Exchange does. Is that kind of like a job-seeking?
No, he's the traffic control officer for the Los Angeles Long Beach Harbor.
Okay, so he probably has people that he could go to see if they have work available.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that's what he means. All right, we have a letter also here from Russell Chandler.
Yes, sir.
C-H-A-N-D-L-E-R. This is a Los Angeles Times religion writer who is retired and lives in the city of Solvay now. And again, another letter of support. How did you happen to meet Mr. Chandler? Or have you met Mr. Chandler?
Yes, I have. I originally met him, he came and did an article for Moody Monthly in mid-'80s sometime. And that's how I originally met him.
We also have a letter here from Barbara Daggett, D-A-G-G-E-T-T, from, looks like it might be Oakland, is that?
Maine.
In Maine?
Yes, sir.
She's just a friend of friend of your wife's?
Yes.
She said, I would solemnly ask that you would give him a chance to come home and live a life worthy of your faith in him. We have a letter as well from Daniel Ritter, R-I-D-D-E-R. And Mr. Ritter, whose name is well known, I think he was the owner of the Press Telegram, that Ritter newspapers.
Knight Ritter?
Yeah, I think he was. I would assume he's now retired, or is he still?
Yes,
okay.
he's retired.
Apparently you met him because his stepson was in prison, and
yes, sir.
You knew his stepson.
Yes, sir.
So he's writing a letter, Bruce should be doing good deeds and contributing to the betterment of his community on the outside, not in prison. And we also have a letter from William P. Clark. Is that the same gentleman we talked about earlier?
Maybe one of those is probably last year's.
That was, yeah, so we don't have to worry that, he says pretty much the same thing. And then we have a letter here from Elmer Kirk and Elizabeth Kirk, and again, that was a letter from 1996.
Yes.
Are there any other letters? Counsel, you had mentioned that you might have some letters that we didn't have. And quite frankly, those are the only letters that we have that were set specifically for this hearing.
Yes, Mr. Ortega, I do have a letter from Chuck Colson of the Prison Fellowship Ministries. If I can just read that into the record.
Well, I would prefer to do that myself.
All right.
And
this is the copy that he sent to Beth Davis, so it is not signed, but it should have gotten here and been put in the file.
Yeah, if it was sent, one page says September the 2nd, and the other one says September the 4th. So it's possible if it got here that maybe it's still working its way up the system. I'm not sure how that works. But he says, and very, very briefly, it says, as a born-again and growing Christian man, Bruce's life continues to bear witness to the changes in his life. He and his wife, Beth, celebrated their 13th anniversary this past February. Together they have a 4-year-old daughter, Taylor Jean, who would profit greatly from her father's love and influence in her life. This kind of support, as you know, will be a tremendous asset in this transition process. From over 20 years of experience in ministry to prisoners, I have learned a few things about the issues of criminal justice and the need for rehabilitation. I think it is fair to say that justice has been served in Bruce's case, that he has shown remarkable restoration and potential toward a productive life. Have you met Mr. Colson?
Not personally.
Okay. He knows then, how did he become acquainted with your case?
Well, I wrote a letter several years ago And then after the letter, about a year later, he and my wife met when I think they were in Belfast at some function. But anyway, she met him there.
Okay. And she obviously just told him about your case, is that?
Well, he already knew about it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay. We do have, we send out, as we talked about earlier, we send out 3042 notices, and those are letters that go out to any agencies that may have an interest in your case, such as the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, or attorney general's office, those types of agencies. Now, we did receive one response dated September the 8th, and that was from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. And very briefly, again, the letter states in the final lines of the letter, it states, the manipulative personality of Charles Manson is well known. What may often be overlooked is the vicious and brutal nature of inmate Davis and other members of the family. No remorse and no empathy certainly were terms which were applicable to inmate Davis when the murders were committed. For these reasons, it is the opinion of the Department that parole for inmate Davis is inappropriate now or in the future. That's signed Captain Don Morrow, M-A-U-R-O, Captain Homicide Bureau for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We also do have a representative here from the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, and he will make his statement at the appropriate time. So with that, I'll return it to the chair.
Commissioner Estrada, any questions?
I just have one. Do you still have a detainer on you? Did you?
A federal.
Federal?
Yes, sir.
So if you get out, you still have to go with the feds and
3 years.
do 3 years federal prison for her.
Yes, sir.
Earned it for a false statement, firearm dealer. Okay, so you've already been convicted on that, correct?
Yes, 1971.
Okay. Okay, because I saw this and I just wanted to make sure that if you did get out, you would still have to, I guess the United States Marshal would pick you up.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
In a sense, that's my real parole plans,
To go to the feds.
the U.S. Marshal.
Okay. Return to the chair.
Commissioner Ortega, any further questions?
Well, just an observation, and maybe you can comment to it. I've had the opportunity to interview a couple of the members of, if we can use that in quotes, Manson family members. And it seems almost without exception, you all seem to program extremely well. And I say that because of what I've read in your file and what some of the other hearings I've done. How is it that you can program so well, and you all did, and while in prison, but yet you were so manipulated and made to do the things that you did by a single person? Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Well, speaking for myself, I was basically looking for a father figure. And sad to say, I adopted Manson for that role. And by the time the murders began to happen, I was well into that mode.
Well, you're 55 now.
Yes, I am.
And you're 56, I think, in the very near October.
October.
So you were, what, about 26, 27 years old?
Yes, I was.
So you were, I guess we can say, for lack of a better term, a mature adult.
I was old
well,
enough
let's say you were an adult. We'll use that term, because obviously to have been able to be moved around and manipulated by Manson. Why was it that that time in your life that you were looking for a father figure?
Well, up to that point, I'd never had one. My dad, I had a father, obviously, but I didn't realize that was what I was doing at the time.
Were you looking for acceptance? Were you looking for support?
Yes.
It's hard to come up with an excuse.
And as I see it now, it looks much different than what it looked like at that point. But I was looking for acceptance, and I obviously did outrageous things because of that. And I wasn't made to do it in the sense that I was not in my own mind. I wasn't hypnotized. I knew it was wrong. I knew the things were wrong. I knew it was wrong.
That the wrongness of those acts seemed to be outweighed by the need for the acceptance?
When I hear that, I mean, it sounds crazy.
It does, yeah.
It does.
It really does.
But, you know, when I look at it, I don't know of I don't have a better explanation. I wish I did, I suppose, but I think that's the truth.
And again, as I prefaced my question to you, and some of the other Manson family members that I've had the opportunity to interview, it seems that you were all under this control, if you can use that term, of one individual. Because all of you, as I say, the ones that I have seen, the ones I read about, seem to have programmed, once they got away from that influence, seemed to have programmed pretty well. I have no further questions.
The letter from Justice Clark, I have a question about that. Has he come to visit you?
No, he hasn't.
Have you ever met him personally?
No, I haven't.
Apparently then someone provided a summary of your programming, and he's made a decision that you've served enough time in prison. Is that what happened?
Here's what I know of his involvement. My wife met him on a plane. They were flying back from LA to LAX. I mean, from LAX to SLO. And her story is this. She says, she says, there was a really nice man, and he had a really nice attaché case that I said, boy, that is really nice. And he started
That's so
talking
nice.
about how he got it, and from Spain, and one thing and another. And so they talked about where they lived, and they talked about...
My question is, what does Justice Clark know about you personally? And if you have talked about the case, whether he has had a full representation about the gravity of the offenses.
Oh, yes. Well, he was on the Supreme Court of California when my cases was reviewed. He reviewed the cases while he was on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
And
you have not personally talked to him?
No, sir.
Nor has he received any information personally from you that may have been in addition to the documents that he reviewed while on the court.
No, sir.
Is that correct?
One time I wrote him a letter, and I said, I appreciate your interest, this and that, and he wrote me back in very straight terms and said, it's not appropriate for us to have a writing relationship. I am not interested in this on some way. He said, I want to stay back. I want to stay neutral in this. And so that's where we're at.
Okay, where we're at is that you've never seen him before in your life.
No, sir.
And you've never explained the intricacies of the case and to an in-depth level your participation in the crimes. Is that correct?
Not personally. I haven't. Now,
you were 27 years old
Yes.
at the time that these incidents happened. You've kind of written your participation off to searching for a father figure and acceptance and the hippie culture, et cetera, et cetera. The fact is that you were an adult at that time and have said on many occasions that your relationship developed because you wanted free drugs and free sex. Is that not correct?
That was a very important part of it.
Okay. You describe these murders, which the records describe as somewhat horrific,
Yes.
as wrong. Wrong seems to be a term that would more appropriately be described shoplifting or
Well,
something.
that's quite an understatement.
Okay.
And I mean it wrong in the worst sense. I'm certainly not saying that I'm not less guilty or I have less responsibility or I should be given the benefit of the doubt because I really didn't know what I was doing or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Manzello, you have questions?
I have no questions, no.
Mr. Curry, do you have any questions?
Danny?
Danny, I'm sorry.
I have no questions.
Mr. Manzella, you have closing?
Yes, briefly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was one of the two prosecutors of Bruce Davis for these two murders, the other being Stephen K. It is my position as the prosecutor, excuse me, I have a cold, and one of the annoying symptoms is this cough. It is my position and the position of the District Attorney's Office that Mr. Davis should not receive parole now or in the foreseeable future. And it is our position that Mr. Davis should not receive a consideration for parole in next year or within any term less than 5 years, because we do not see anything happening between now and the next 5-year period that would change the position of the District Attorney's Office and my position as the prosecutor that Mr. Davis should not receive parole. And in support of that position, I want to point out a few things for the board. In the first place, we were asking for the death sentence when the trial of Mr. Davis began. During the trial, I believe it was during jury selection, but it was after the trial began, that the California Supreme Court struck down the death penalty law under which we were operating. That meant, of course, that Mr. Davis was no longer subject to a death sentence, and therefore he received life imprisonment, the indeterminate sentence of life in prison. Today, if Mr. Davis committed these crimes today and was convicted of these crimes today, his minimum sentence, he still would be subject to a death sentence, but his minimum sentence would be life without possibility of parole. Now, I realize the Board of Prison Terms cannot operate under current law in considering parole for Mr. Davis, but I point that out to point out what society considers of these crimes today in terms of what punishment should be received by the person committing those crimes. We also want to point out that Mr. Davis never testified at trial. He never expressed remorse for these killings until after his arrest, his prosecution, his sentencing, and substantial time in state prison. He did not admit his guilt until 1977, according to my review of his CDC file. He did not admit his guilt until 1977, 8 years after the murders, although he claimed to have found religion much earlier. And that's contained in the 11/28/77 psychiatric report of R.K. Bolin, B-O-L-I-N. 11 years after the murders, in a psychiatric evaluation dated 11/10/80, Mr. Davis was continuing to refuse to identify his crime partners, he said, to protect their rights on appeal. And that's contained in S.E. Butler, B-U-T-L-E-R's 11/10/80 psychiatric report. From 1988, the life prisoner evaluation for this hearing, Mr. Davis, or it is stated that today Mr. Davis regrets his actions and feels helpless because he wishes there was something he could do. It's the position of the District Attorney's Office and my position as the prosecutor that there is something Mr. Davis can do. He can be forced to remember these awful crimes every day for the rest of his life. If he's freed on parole, there will come a day when he will forget his participation in these awful crimes and the awful things he did with the Manson family and its members. With the passage of time, his only link to these crimes is his incarceration. If Mr. Davis is doing good works today, he can do those good works inside prison walls. They're certainly needed. And therefore, it's my position as the prosecutor and position of the District Attorney's Office that Mr. Davis should not receive parole and that he should not even be considered for parole in less than another 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Manzella.
And for the last 2 or 3 years, he has presented to the board the position of the District Attorney's Office, a position that was taken after considerable consideration by the head deputy DA and others within the DA's office that although they would not go on the record as favoring parole, nevertheless, it was the office's position that Bruce Davis was no longer a threat to society. And that appears in several of the transcripts of his hearings. On the hearing of 1995, August 2nd, there's the specific colloquy from Commissioner Giaquinto. I want to ask you a question because I read Mr. Manzella's statement. As a representative of the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, his opinion and your office's opinion at that time that this was written was a little different than what you're stating today. So are you saying that your office has changed their opinion? And now, at the time he felt that he should never be released as long as he could hold a gun or a knife in his hand. And what you're saying now is consider the crime, but you don't think he's a threat. So are you saying that your office has changed its official position? Deputy District Attorney Jonas, I'm going to tell you what the office has told me to say, and that is that I am at liberty to say that Mr. Davis is no longer a threat, but that our office continues to oppose parole. And that has been repeated by Mr. Jonas in subsequent hearings. Of course, the sine qua non as to his being suitable for parole is that issue. Is he a threat to the public? And there is absolutely no question over the earlier years of his incarceration that based on everything he had been and had done up to that time, he was a threat. But you have now had for a number of years the counselors, the psychiatrists, the psychologists saying that when compared with other prisoners, he is a low threat or below average. Even Mr. York, in his Counselor 1 report, when he says, nobody can say what somebody else will do, and therefore I must say he is unpredictable. But if called upon to judge, I would say that he was a low threat to the community. I've written you, gentlemen, a letter this year, which I assume you had a chance to review. I empathize with your positions as appointed members of a board to protect the public. And nobody needs to tell you what your job is in that respect. Nobody needs to tell you how serious these crimes were or how serious the Manson family posed a threat way back in 1969 and 1970. But times change. Now, Mr. Manzella said, you bet times change. Now, if Mr. Davis were convicted, the least he could be sentenced to is life without possibility of parole. But you, he says, cannot be judging him on those bases because that's not what he was sentenced under. And my recollection differs from my friend Mr. Manzella, with whom I spent many hours at opposite ends of the counsel table in this case when I represented Bruce Davis at trial, was that because Charlie Manson was tried on this case before Mr. Davis and before Steve Grogan, and the jury did not bring in a death sentence on him, that is Manson. And under those circumstances,
On Grogan.
well, on Manson or Grogan, under those circumstances, it was my understanding that the DA felt they should not pursue the death penalty as to Grogan or Davis.
Excuse me, Mr. Denny, the purpose of the hearing is the suitability of parole of Mr. Davis. Could you focus your remarks on that?
I will try to do that. Your questioning, Mr. Williams, has been the most searching and the most telling of any commissioner that I have heard address the subject in the 9 years, I think it is now, that I've been representing Mr. Davis. One cannot help but blanch at the horrors of the crimes. There was a time, partly at my instance, when Bruce Davis said nothing because, as a good criminal defense attorney, which I think I was, I told him to say nothing. And while his case was on appeal, I told him to admit nothing. Now, it was several years after I had lost contact with Mr. Davis that he finally became forthcoming with the information which he has given now a number of times in a number of these hearings. I don't think any one of you gentlemen, and there have been ladies also who have heard him over the past few years, I don't think any of you feel that this is not a thoroughly changed individual. Mr. Ortega mentions that most of the Manson family members that he knows anything about program well. And of course, one of the most scary things about Charlie Manson was the fact that it was the boy and the girl next door who fell under his spell and who did these horrendous crimes. But again, a person at age 27 even, and Mr. Ortega said, well, you're a mature adult. Doesn't have to be mature. An adult, yes, but immature. And adults change over the years.
So on his Wikipedia, I read that the thing before he got with the Manson family, he had went overseas to the UK. I forget exactly what it said. I still have his the Wiki up here. Hold on. And he did something for the Church of Scientology. Yeah, Davis lived in London in November of '68 to April of '69. Okay, so half a year while working at the Church of Scientology headquarters. So this guy was going to be manipulated either way, right? Like either way it goes, he's basically going to be following some dumb shit.
Now, the whole business about parole used to be, how much has the prisoner changed? How much is he different now than when he came in convicted of the crime or crimes? And as I pointed out in my letter, the penological model at the time Bruce Davis was convicted and sent to prison emphasized rehabilitation. Rehabilitation. Now, to say that these days the penological model is punishment And therefore, we should look at the model that prisoners have to be looked at today under today's rules. I think smacks of ex post facto punishment greater than was available and imposed at the time he was sentenced. He has done everything this board, all your prior members, have directed him to do so that he would be suitable for parole consideration. I just have to raise the one issue with you, Mr. Williams, that you brought up about Justice Clark. Justice Clark asked Beth, Bruce's wife, to have his attorney get in touch with him because he was impressed by her, impressed by what she said about Bruce. I gave him a sheaf of documents, the bad as well as the good, saying exactly what had happened, what Bruce was convicted of, what he had done. So that letter, and how many prisoners get a letter from a very conservative ex-justice, ex-clemency secretary of the governor, ex-director of the Security Council when Mr. Reagan was president.
Qualifications of Justice Clark. Do you have anything further as to the suitability of the prisoner's parole?
Yes, I do. A number of members of this board at various times have taken Bruce Davis to task when he has, after years of psychiatry and psychology that you people have directed him to have, said he has ultimately come to understand why he became attached to Manson and the family, for acceptance, because Manson became a father figure. That is something that perhaps you don't want to hear, that he should have been stronger, he should have had a stronger moral set of values, but, you know, that's a fact.
Stomach? Did you guys hear that?
And
Jesus.
the gangs that you have, and you hear their parole applications, almost without question, gang affiliation is for acceptance, for feeling part of a group. The Manson gang is, in that respect, no different from other gangs, the Crips, the Bloods, 18th Street, Diamond Street gang. The fact that he was a member of that gang and committed and was part of terrible crimes is admitted. The fact that he has changed and is a changed human being should, I think, also be accepted. It's been accepted by the psychiatrists and the psychologists and the counselors who have submitted reports to you. To say that this man who has changed his life around so much, who does affect for the good people's lives in prison, should not be considered for parole, I think is tragic.
Okay, Mr. Denny, we understand the thrust of your argument. I again would like to finish up this this phase. If you have something pertinent to the parole suitability of Mr. Davis, we would like to hear it. But to reiterate that he was a changed person, I think, is becoming redundant. Do you have something to close with?
I find it difficult to put into words, in a couple of words, my feeling about this man and about his suitability. I do not believe that you people will hear the parole petitions of very many other prisoners who have changed themselves and been changed through the process. I've said it once or twice before, that Bruce Davis should really be the poster boy for the Department of Corrections and for the Board of Prison Terms.
Fine. We will accept your statement. Mr. Davis, do you have a short statement relative to your parole suitability?
Well, you know, I don't have anything to say about. First, let me say what I don't have anything to say about. I'm not here to fight the case. I certainly accept all the responsibility for things I did, and I did what I did, and I'm sorry. I am appalled at myself and hardly expressible how I'm sorry about my ever becoming involved with Manson and ever having his influence in my life. I've done what I can since I came to myself to reverse the bad effects that I could reverse as far as my association with Manson, that I renounce and reject everything he did and he continues to do. And I've been on record and I've made public statements about my feelings about that and my position. I'm even more sorry about the families and the people that were hurt by what I did. The parents, the children, the brothers, the sisters. I know that Gary Hinman had a future. He had plans. He had things to accomplish in his life. Donald Shady had ambitions. He had people that loved him, that provided relationships for him. I can't even say, well, I know how what people feel. I could never presume upon that kind of knowledge, but I know that I was a part of taking something away from him that was it was horrendous. I can't tell you how sorry and it's not just sorry for myself, but it's sorry for a person that loses that kind of opportunity at the hands of what I did.
Okay. Thank you. We will stand in recess for deliberations. It's now approximately 9:50.
Dan done popped up in the murder
This
church.
is
This has got to go into part 2 here, which is not very long, 4 minutes. And yeah, we got much longer here, folks. Thanks everyone again for being here. Appreciate it. Hit that like. Murder Church, weird time spot here today, but we're doing it, baby.
Okay, the hearing is once again in session. It's now approximately 10:05. Those in the room when we went to recess have returned. Mr. Davis, the panel unanimously voted to deny your parole for 1 year. The panel reviewed all information received from the public and relied on the following circumstances in concluding that the prisoner is not suitable for parole and would pose an unreasonable risk of danger to society and a threat to public safety if released. The first thing is the commitment offense, obviously. The offense was carried out in an especially cruel and callous manner and was carried out in a manner which exhibits a callous disregard for the life and suffering of another. The offense was carried out in a particularly dispassionate and calculated manner. Multiple victims were attacked and killed in separate incidents. The victims were abused and mutilated during the offenses. The murder of one victim did not deter the prisoner from soon thereafter participating in another brutal murder. In that he participated in the murder of Mr. Shea about 1 month after participating in the murder of Mr. Hinman. These conclusions are drawn from the statement of fact wherein the prisoner and crime partners kept Mr. Hinman prisoner in his home for 2 days, during which time he was stabbed and clubbed before finally being put to death. Mr. Hinman suffered a stab wound to the heart, a gash to the top of his head, a gash behind his right ear, and a laceration to the left side of his face, which cut off part of his ear and cheek. In addition, the prisoner participated in the brutal stabbing death of Mr. Shea. The body was buried, and the prisoner refused to inform authorities of its location when questioned. The body was not recovered for approximately 8 years when information was obtained from a crime partner. Your previous record. The prisoner has an escalating pattern of criminal conduct and a persistent pattern of tumultuous relationships and criminal behavior, which commenced at an early age, and an unstable social history. Unstable social history and prior criminality, which includes the abuse of hard drugs at an early age, arrests for possession of marijuana, receiving stolen property, grand theft auto, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and fraudulently obtaining a firearm. That crime resulted in a 3-year federal prison sentence, which will be served after the prisoner is released from state prison. The panel makes the following findings. The prisoner needs to continue any available therapy in order to face, discuss, understand, and cope with stress in a non-destructive manner. Until progress is made, the prisoner continues to be an unpredictable and a threat to others. Nevertheless, the prisoner should be commended for extensive religious involvement and programming while in prison, and remaining disciplinary-free since 1980. Of particular note is the fact that the prisoner received a master's degree this year from the Bethany Seminary, graduating summa cum laude. That concludes the hearing. It's now approximately 10 minutes after 10. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your consideration.
Hey, no.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega. All right.
Excuse me. Can you hold them here until I chat a little bit here?
All right, yeah. Another one of these Manson parole hearings down, and there's still, more to go if we need them. I like to use them kind of as like the special presentation type of deal. Seems to work out. Hopefully next week, again, I can get Bob Mott on here for the finals, for the closing arguments of the Dr. Jack Kevorkian trial. Again, he had, some personal stuff going on in his life today. But keep your eye on the channel this week. I know tomorrow is a holiday, but I know Jay is going to be streaming some of the interrogation stuff. I think maybe the Alec Baldwin interrogation from that Rust trial that's getting ready to start up on Wednesday. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to be keeping up with that here as well. This week, I'm going to be still live tweeting and trying to keep everybody up to date as well on the Alaskan case. yeah, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts. Thank you guys so much for hanging and banging here today. Appreciate it. Share this out if you haven't. Give it a like if you haven't. That really helps us out here. Yeah, folks. Trying to think if I'm missing anything here. Yeah, actually, yeah, go and check this out. I just dropped, hopefully, I hope I can get my ducks in a row. I spent some time yesterday working on episode 3 of the Idaho 4 series that I'm doing. But here is a short that I just now dropped and made today. This is hyping up basically the ending of episode 2. And then if even inside of this short, underneath the logo and the name of Publicly Buzzed, if you click Idaho 4 the series, it'll take you right to the full video from episode 2 So yeah, I'm going to give the link of that short in here right now. Also, when you get there, give it a full watch, give it a like. Again, really helps us out here. Yeah, love you guys. A lot of stuff hanging and banging here today. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be good. I think I actually got to go to work, so yeah, I don't think I'm actually out for the holiday, so that sucks. But
I'm telling you like it
boom.
is, baby.
Later, guys. I will see you all Tuesday. Later.